Welcome to the AI Summit Forecast 25. We've gathered an all-star group of GTM operators, VCs, C-levels, and analysts to dive deep into what the future holds for 2025. Our goal is to tackle the big question every leader faces when shaping the next go-to-market strategy this year. We want to cover everything from go-to-market trends and AI regulations to workforce shifts and emerging business models. And we got 3 days, 9 content tracks, cutting-edge AI tech demos, over 60 speakers, and 1,000 attendees. And we're for an exciting ride. How's everyone doing? Allie, Allison, Carolou, Thomas.
Good.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Before we look back, we just want to take a quick round of introduction. Our first panel is Post-Mortem 2024, Reflections and Analysis. Allie, you need no intros. You had outreach is marketing, but it would be fascinating to learn more and some backstory. How did you start working with outreach? And yeah, tell us more.
Well, it's funny that I ended up at Outreach because I actually started my career in the sales engagement space at a different company, and Outreach wasn't even I don't think it existed yet when I first started. And I do remember, that company at the time was the market leader, and we would be the marquee sponsors at all the big trade shows. And then I remember, Manny Medina sort of in the corner with his little roll-up booth thinking, that's so cute, thinking you can come into this really established space and just take it over. And that's what he did. So when a couple of years ago, I was looking for my next opportunity and Outreach was looking for a tech-forward marketing executive that was interested in AI, I just jumped at the opportunity. And I'm so excited I get to talk to incredibly talented people like everyone here on this panel today.
So exciting to feature you. Carolou, let's transition to you. Tell us more about yourself. And not that you need an introduction. You took it last in public, but would love to learn the backstory as well.
My name is Carolou. I'm a former CMO, most notably the head of marketing that took Atlassian in public. I ran awareness advertising for Oracle before that, but now I advise CEOs and CMOs of hypergrowth companies, including Miro and 1Password and Segment and others, Sprout Social. And really, the reason I advise CEOs and CMOs is because a lot of the marketing challenges that we face are really company strategy challenges about the markets we choose, the pricing we choose, the go-to-market strategy, product-led growth or sales-led, so many things that AI is touching today, both on the strategy and execution side. So I'm excited to be here today with this great panel of folks.
Very exciting. Allison, let's transition to you.
Thank you, Carolou. That's why I read your newsletter every time it comes through. I just got one. Can't wait to read it. Thank you for your comments. I'm Allison Snow. I'm the CMO of StreamPoint Solutions. I spent 4 years at Forrester from 2016, 2020-ish on the B2B marketing team, talking about predictive analytics, which of course morphed into AI and things like ABM. So I've got to tell you, I'm joining here from my home in Boston. If anybody's close, hello. And I'm simply thrilled to be in the company I'm in today. So thank you so much for having me.
What a thrill. Thomas.
Hi, I'm Thomas. I'm one of the general partners at Alven. We're an early stage fund, so we've been investing for the past 20 years in companies, especially in AI. But back in the days was when AI was called statistics. So we've seen a lot of changes over the past decade, but especially in the last couple of years. And we spend a lot of time advising our companies on go-to-market strategies.
Amazing to feature you. Huge fans of attention, by the way. Brian.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for having me. I am Brian Burkett. I'm the Chief Sales Officer of Lean Data. I'm actually a boomerang at Lean Data. I helped the founding revenue process at Lean Data, taking them from seed stage through Series C and their early sort of revenue stages. I'm back now leading revenue at Lean Data, overseeing it all, and am excited to participate in the panel.
Last but not least, Robin.
Well, hey everyone, how's it going? I am coming in from Amsterdam. I just got here today. I'm actually speaking at the Gainsight Pulse Europe event tomorrow, which is they were one of the key sponsors for this AI summit. So super excited to be able to double dip. It's great to see all of you. Some faces I know, some people I don't know. I spent more than 20 years of my career in Silicon Valley working in companies like Salesforce, Box, LinkedIn. WeWork, Matterport. I've taken a few companies public. WeWork was a disaster. That's a story for another day. Now I focus on go-to-market. I'm the chief business officer and chief product officer at a company called Sensei, which is a scale-up company of about 250 people. We're in the HR tech space, and we're thinking a lot about how AI is going to play a key part in our customer success. So excited to be on this panel with all of you.
Amazing. Ali, the stage is yours.
Great. Well, again, so excited to be able to talk with this group because, talk about expertise. So let's kick it off. AI is the hot topic in tech, and we heard so much chatter from every single industry on the planet on it. So I would love to ask this group what did they get right about AI this year? And also, what does it even mean to get AI right? Ooh, let's start with Carrie Lou.
I like experimenting with the hand there. I think that this year was really transformational, right? OpenAI's launch to fame is 2 years old. The first year was watching. This year was really deep experimentation. So across all the companies and CMOs I talked to, we've established teams that at the company work on the governance policies, are evaluating tools for more company-wide implementation. There's all sorts of training that's happened for employees, both at a general level and a specific level. There's a ton of employees that have done their own deep dives into how they might use AI in their personal lives and professional lives. And then we've seen some really successful experimentation. So I think this year was the year of experimentation, and next year is the year of production and production gains.
Yeah, totally. I'll raise my hand.
Go on.
Okay, so I think of it, I think what you just said, Carrie Lou, I'm totally with you. It feels like it became real in 2024. I think of it this way, is that I think it's been proven here in 2024 that AI will disrupt everything to do with hard skills and data and insights and so on. But we're very far from having AI disrupting everything to do with soft skills. So I always think about the people I interact with, CEOs and customers, or even people on my team, I coach them accordingly. I think investing in soft skills is going to be a key differentiator in the future. But what we've seen is that AI, if it comes to anything to do with like synthesizing data, can do it much better and probably faster than most humans can do. But when it comes to actually the soft part of the jobs that we do, whether it's sales or marketing, we've seen some really shitty outreach this year through AI bots and so on. We're very far from, I think, AI being able to replace humans when it comes to actually doing the meaningful work of building relationships with each other, whether that's a partner or customer, employees, and so on. It'll help, I think. It can coach and guide and so on, but actually replace it, I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was on a panel with, Hard Skill Exchange not that long ago, and it was a lot of practitioners like myself, and one of the common themes was that while there's so much that AI can do to help, when it comes to building relationship, for one example is when you want to book a hotel room, you just want to do that online for yourself. But when you want a trusted recommendation, when you really want to get it right, that you want to talk to someone who has had that experience, sort of get that advice, that there's, that relationship part. Brian, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, although, AI really took off this year, I think 2024 was also about the year of efficiency. And so I think that the companies that really got AI right this year looked for tools and using AI as a way to expand and enhance the folks that they have in seat today versus the ones that may have tried to replace their humans, and sort of follow up with what Robin said. So.
Yeah, Thomas, please just jump in. I want this to be a conversation as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think this year a lot of people have tested AI kind of as a new thing, but then people have realized that it's not just a way to cut cost and to be more efficient, but it's a way to leverage the data that they have and to expand best practices. And I think that's something new that people realize, that it can also drive revenues and just improve the customer experience. And in the end, I think it's all about your customer experience. And I think we're going to see more of that, in the next year or so, where AI is going to be really a tool to do things better rather than just a pure efficiency play.
I mean, I think that we're all marketers here somewhat, right? And how easily also it can hurt your brand, right? If you're trying to create an epic brand that people fall in love with, it can easily go sideways if you rely too much on AI to do the heavy lifting for you. So we're a very fine balance, like delicate time where we're a lot of experimentation, and rightly so, but also you're seeing a lot of really crappy results out there for sure. I mean, the amount of outreach you all probably get on LinkedIn and emails, like, oof, you can just tell it's so poorly done, right?
Well, and as technology execs, we have the double weight. It's the weight of how do we get our teams effective with AI, but how do we get products that are really innovative with AI? And Thomas, back to what you're saying, I think that a lot of AI integrations in existing products were like, here's a auto-generated field that was already in our product. But I think what we'll start to see is new ways of working and processes that are more innovative, that aren't just adapting our existing product, plugging AI in, but thinking in a more AI native way. Like could a different outcome be generated in a different format? And when I think about it, even if you think about like Salesforce and like the Salesforce flow that structures so much of our process, like a long time ago in software, when you had to buy SAP, and then you had to change the processes in your company to match their software. I think we're about to go through another one of those major transitions where our whole sales process is built in this sales flow. But if we really get into mass personalization with AI and interactions throughout this flow, it might not fit in the structure of our current software box, and that's going to be a big change.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Okay, well, a question that I've probably been most excited to ask, which is, this is a post-mortem after all. So the follow-up is, what did people get wrong about AI in 2024?
I hate to be the first person on this one because it's such a negative twist, but I agree with all the positive things. I think there's two I'll kind of say lightly without diving in too deeply. I do think that companies showed some indication of sort of conflating the tech with the outcome and jumping in because AI sounds really exciting. It's on the box of the software you purchased. Surely it must be good. So I think we overlooked, at least some companies that I have the pleasure of talking to, overlooked the core use cases that they wanted to perfect anyway, and sort of took a right turn to say, well, AI is going to help me with this, so I'm going to dig in deeper here. And so I think that led to folks just kind of checking a box. But I think the big thing I would say, and not so much that people did wrong, but they were less prepared, is it was almost sloppy. And a more polite way to say that would be decentralized, but I'm just going to go with sloppy because Julia likes when we're a little controversial, and I want to deliver that. And what that looked like was, you have one person at a client site delivering an app from Gamma, or you've got another person uploading fairly sensitive materials to ChatGPT as a training material. And I think what we've never had before in a B2B setting or any setting is a group of marketers who are hungry to express their ideas with access to these tools at consumer price points, like $0 in many cases, 20 a month at the most, just outrageously affordable tools to kind of go in and do what we want. And I think without and I don't want people to overly complicate this, and I don't want to be the guy that kind of says overly complicate this, but I definitely have sensed with the organizations with whom I work that there's just a lack of governance that can be alarming, and I think will only get worse if we don't sort of get in front of that in 2025.
And it was a tough year to be good at governance because it was an efficiency year. So I think, if I were to pick on things that we've done wrong, it's generally because for a number of companies that aren't AI native companies, growth has still been really difficult. And cutbacks in lots of companies have affected the weight of work on team members. So the idea of totally changing your way of work in the middle of having kind of one of the tightest years in the last decade is a really difficult trade-off for marketers. So I agree, Allison. I think on the governance and security, there's both a training component, and then there's also an ownership and assignment component that's really important. And I think some of the bigger companies are used to having more of a governance committee. They have a more active legal, but definitely in startup land, there's a lot of individualized purchasing of AI tools, and we know that some of those don't have the same privacy protections as the enterprise tools do.
I also think for me, it's in 2024, whenever we've gone through these big shifts, whether that was cloud or mobile and so on, we had the killer apps. I'm still waiting for the killer app. I can't think of one that I'm just like, it's so excited to use every day, that's changed the way I live and work and so on. I mean, there's small apps. I use ChatGPT all the time and other small things as well, but this hasn't really been like the killer. So I feel like the hype is high, and I think the whole world is kind of waiting for that killer app to show up, And it's also, if I hear about another chatbot that can improve my customer success efficiency or sales outreach, I'm going to shoot myself. It's like, okay, we don't need a gazillion of these, right? What is the killer use case for AI? And maybe it is what you just said, Carol. Maybe it's just all about like incremental efficiency gains, because that's what the world needs. But I'm still waiting for that killer app. I don't know if any of you have seen it. I certainly haven't myself yet.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Thomas.
Okay. Yeah. I just feel that AI is probably not quite ready yet, and I think a lot of companies are kind of like failing to realize that the AI tools will only be as good as your data and processes, right? And so if you don't have the right data and the right processes in place to manage actually the tools you're trying to adopt, it's not going to work, and actually it could even make things much worse. And it feels like a lot of companies still using those tools as a shortcut, right? They feel like, well, I'm not getting any sales or leads. Let's use this tool and see what happens. And that often fails. So I think that's a challenge still in the market, but more for young companies.
But I think part of that is also our over expectation of what it can be. So I use ChatGPT, but I also use Claude, and I really love Anthropic's commitment to privacy and values and security and safety. And one of the engineers that does a lot of their training had talked about how she'll have conversations with Claude that's like 40 or 60 or 100 back and forths. And when I first heard it, I thought, oh, that's interesting, because I'll ask it 3 questions and get frustrated and be like, this is annoying, I can do better myself. And that my own impatience, and Thomas, kind of going back to what you're saying, I advised an AI company 6 or 7 years ago, and one of the challenges was it did take companies like 6 or 7 or 9 months to get their data structure correct, to train the AI and get the right questions. And we've come a long way, and everyone talks about it like it's magic, but really your own skill is what gets the highest skill results out of any of the AI engines. And so I do think, Robin, to your point, there's not a magic app. And in part, that's because it can be magic only to the degree of our own capability to put in good inputs and ask the right questions, and maybe have the tenacity to keep going to refine it in a way that, today, I think it's easy to kind of give up early and say it's not there, when really, like, think about how hard we've worked on our Salesforce implementations.
It's true. I'll give you an example. So my company was just named the Gartner Cool Vendor, which is really cool. I'm very excited about this. We're announcing this tomorrow. And so I was doing a big announcement to our company internally, because this is something I've been working on for quite a while. To make this happen. And so I go to ChatGPT and I ask which other Danish companies have been named the Gartner Cool Vendor, and it comes back with a list of companies, and I've never heard of them. So I go and I look them up, and they're not Danish. So I go back and I write to ChatGPT, well, these companies aren't Danish, why would you recommend them? And it just comes back and says, oh, sorry, I get it wrong all the time. I'm like, well, what if you rely on this data to do your job? I'm like, so to your point, Thomas, I think the governance and the accuracy of information is, if you still have to do double duty on all this, or if you're relying on it, it's quite dangerous if you're going to use this in a public way in your marketing or go to market or sales and so on. It might get there, and maybe I need to try some of the other platforms out there, Carol, that you're using. Maybe they're even better, but it's just like, feels like there's still a lot of work to do.
I think there's a medium, Robin, between what you're saying and Carrie Lou, and that I do feel like I've started to crack the code on the cusp of it, of using ChatGPT and those other tools as thought partners. And so you do kind of go back and make it more conversational, and the killer app going to turn out to be us all along, and our wisdom and our ability to not only prompt well, but kind of say, I don't really see ChatGPT or those tools as fact generators. I feel like that is all that you are going to do double duty then. But I do think as a thought partner, it's, explore this idea. I think Google's still your place for other Danish companies. I don't know, but in terms of like, hey, I have this idea. Can you write it so it's more persuasive? I did that this morning and it was brilliant. It really came out nice and probably saved me 20 minutes. And that's just one thing. So I'm not here to defend ChatGPT, except to say, I think the medium between, using it as a thought partner and using it for facts is asking for, challenge me on this, write this in a different way, present this in a different tone, and kind of leaning on it that way.
It's inefficient. I agree right now, Dan, Robin, I'll use Claude, Gemini, and ChatGPT for some things and use them against each other. It's also a legal liability. So there's already Air Canada was already found guilty for a chatbot that made up information about their bereavement fare. So I think there's two different lands. How do we use it personally? Can we fact check it ourselves? We'll get there. But how do we rely on it for customer facing? That's even more high risk.
Yeah, well, just first of all, share my fail because I asked all of you. I think Carrie Lou, you mentioned this earlier, was doing a training for my marketing team and expecting them to just be like, okay, great, and run. But the feedback I got from a lot of my leaders was, we still have really tight deadlines, and this is a new skill. If you want us to accomplish it in the amount of time it generally has taken us, we're going to do things the way we've always done them. Now, when I said, so my mistake was not building that in. Once I said, you're absolutely right. Here's a deadline. We can expand. Let's take that time to do that. We did see really good adoption, but learning something new is really, really hard. And, prompting and whatnot. So yeah, anyway, as all of us are we're all practitioners of marketing, there is no way none of us heard something like, can't we just get rid of our content writers and use ChatGPT for everything? Or we don't need creative, there is no way none of us got questions on what we could or couldn't do with AI. But as we've all been saying earlier, it's really hard to do it correctly or to fact check. So what I would love to hear from this group are examples of where did you see AI having the biggest impact on go-to-market orgs and really deliver results?
I think Brian should start and talk about his SDRs, because otherwise I'll talk about SDRs. The Snowflake CMO talked about her SDRs when I hosted her at SaaStr. I really think the world of SDRs is being transformed the most quickly after content with AI.
I agree.
Brian, tell us your story.
Yeah, so we have we purchased a couple tools this year to sort of drive efficiency with our SDR team. One, we restructured our SDRs. We have about 75% less headcount than we had year over year, but we've been able to keep the same level of productivity that we measure in SDR source pipeline. So just a couple things that we've done to sort of enhance them. One was just around how can we get more connects and conversations. So we did purchase Nooks, which is calling technology, and then we wanted to enhance their emails. So we didn't purchase something that automatically sent emails, but we tried to help them write better emails. So we gave them Lavender as a tool. So for us, we've really leaned into like, how do I get more out of the folks that I have already? But actually going back to the previous question, I was going to say that I'm overwhelmed. Like it's hard to keep track of all the different technologies because from a 10,000 foot view, they all sound the same. There's like 300 SDRs, and I don't know, as a consumer, as a leader, how I'm supposed to stay ahead of that. So we've placed some bets. It's worked for us to this point, but I worry about how I'm going to stay ahead of that and keep these folks performing at a high level with the latest and greatest.
Yeah,
I think a lot
we've
of
been
people
using it for
appreciate-
SDRs. Oh, go ahead, Allison.
Really short one. I think a lot of people will appreciate, Brian, how well you've done and how well you've selected tools, and also an admission that isn't this so hard, and how will we stay ahead of it? That's all. Thanks. Thanks, Robin.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, we also in our team, our SDR team also uses AI, because if you say we get a lead list after a trade show, we can easily go and enhance the information from that lead list quickly using AI, figure out, okay, who's the key contact here? What industry are they in? What do they look for? What issues do they have? AI is really actually good at doing that. So we can build a fairly quick profile around a customer or a prospect using AI. It's not always perfect, but at least it gets us probably 70-80% of the way, and it becomes much more efficient for an AE or an SDR to do the outreach to the right people at the right time, kind of with a message that resonates. And then what you said, Allison, I think before around content. I mean, it won't. We're not at the point where we're replacing content writers, but it gets us much more efficient. We can create a pretty good draft of content by saying, right around this topic with this tone of voice, with these key things. Like, it's all about the prompting, right? But if you can prompt it correctly, then you can actually be much more efficient in putting out content that can hit the audiences that you care about, and so on. So I think what we've become good at in our teams is the prompting. Is something also I've personally had to learn quite a bit. I'll give you a little insight. My son graduated high school this year, very exciting, and I had to write a speech for his graduation party, and I used AI, and I just put in a lot of prompts into it, like an inordinate amount of information about he loved Harry Potter and he's a gamer and blah blah blah, and it came out with a pretty good draft. And I'm like, so to get you out into part of the way, I think AI is a lifesaver, because it can be so much more efficient, and our teams are using it for the exact same reason.
I don't know if I can. Oops, sorry.
Carol,
I
please.
was going to say, I don't know if I can share a slide, but I covered on my newsletter the how OpenAI uses ChatGPT for marketing. So they did a webinar that was hard to find on their website, but they shared some data about where their enterprise team is seeing people use it, and content generation really blew everything away. And then research, Robin, as you're talking about, data analysis, task automation, and then others kind of coming along. I've seen some companies get some really fantastic early translation ROI out of the gates. So I don't know that this is statistically significant, but coming directly from the OpenAI team about some of their customer research, this is where they're seeing marketers use AI.
I hadn't seen this before. It's super interesting, because it supports, I think, a little bit what we talk about. That all the stuff to the left is the hard skills. The stuff on the right, the strategy, is kind of, you need a lot of soft skills to build strategy, I think, really, which is not surprising that it's so low in that sense, because that's not just about inputting data, it's about also the interconnectedness of everything that happens in a company.
I also think that tools are coming along, right? So Anthropic has Canvas, and I don't know, Google has Gems, and OpenAI has projects, something where you can load in a bunch more things and kind of have a workspace. I was talking to one CMO who was really cynical about AI in terms of the individual chatbots. He was like, you know what, these big vendors that I have are going to integrate it in really seamless ways that work with our business processes. I don't need to do all this janky workarounds to try to make this this is going to become a mature market that serves value. So I guess back to your point, it's possible that one of the companies that we use that already has a bunch of our information could help us do strategy work and segment our audience and look at our revenue conversion rates. That could come directly out of our sales management systems and help us do strategy different. I think today we're still kind of on the cutting edge of people trying to kind of piece it together themselves and figure out how to do real prompts for complex items.
I think that's why you see content generation being so high. It is the lowest hanging fruit and the least skilled, to be perfectly honest. That's where I'm using it. But we came back from a conference, and we scored leads. If you were 1 or 2, you got personalized outreach, 3, 4s, and 5s. Who cares? you get the drift. But to assemble those outreaches, we used AI, and a member of my team built a script and worked in things that they had talked about at the booth, comments that they had, questions they had. But that building of the script was more than I'm capable of. It took a technical skill that I simply don't have, and I was glad to have it. But I do think we'll have to kind of meet it halfway too for some of these more advanced use cases and learn some stuff that we haven't quite yet for that bar chart that you have, Carol, I think, to change meaningfully.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it this way, but looking at the chart you just showed us and that word of that CMO cynicism, it seems like we're all quite cynical if we're using it for, as you said, Allison, the low-hanging fruit, but not strategy. For strategy to be so small, it must be that there is this sort of wider spread cynicism that, like, can it really do it yet? And I think, there's absolutely going to be truth in that, like meeting it halfway. But it'll be, really, if you want to get us back together this time next year, it'll be really interesting to see how that strategy component, if it's the same or if it goes up markedly or just, if it inches up building our trust. I'll be really curious to watch that.
Yeah, I think today, I mean, we see like new startups, every day, building the same kind of like low hanging fruit tools. I think they're all focused on, selling, like getting products to market quickly. So they will target the easy part, right? The data input, content generation, call transcripts, etc. But I think in 12 months, it's going to look quite different, right? Once those tools are going to be in place, then I think we're going to move into more strategic insights. But I think that's going to take a while. But I think the innovation is definitely coming in that space. I think once you see widespread adoption, those tools will start to add more features that are more high level. So that's, I think, when it's going to be start to be interesting, right? When you're going to have like real deep insights in data, like things that will help you with retention, improving the product, and making teams work together. But that's, I think, 12 months down the line.
Actually, interesting that you just mentioned product, because we're going to ask some questions from the audience. One of them is, how can AI improve our product development cycle? Again, we're all marketers here, but we all work really closely with product. And if you don't have a great product, it's a lot harder to be a marketer.
Mhm.
So
I think it can help in a number of ways. It can help gather insights faster from customers. That's what we're using it for a lot, trying to scale that. One of the ways that we try to build great products is by listening to our customers more. And it's always been quite manual, I think, to do so. I think you can use AI to do so. So we use that in our outreach and try to scale that in our product itself. And then we also use it in terms of like when we're doing like our brainstorming, we use AI to like think about what are adjacencies to what we're focused on that could actually be game changers that maybe others in the space that we're in don't have, like some things. So yeah, I wouldn't say that we have fully evolved yet. I would like us to use it more. Honestly, I'm pushing the team to try to figure out other use cases for it, but I think we're dipping our toes into it. Yeah.
I haven't tried it, but I've heard of people creating personas with different GPTs and then asking and interviewing them, which is an interesting scale for, at Atlassian, we ended up having problems of overusing our customers. Product wanted to interview them, marketing wanted to promote them, customer support wanted, sales and needed to sell to them. And so having kind of constant access to really deep thinking from a different industry or persona could also really help with some of the strategy work at multiple levels in product.
Yeah, we will create those personas, but we use them more as training aids. So whether you're a rep or an SDR, like, hey, here's a marketing ops manager that you want to talk to, what's important to them, things like that.
Very cool idea.
So while we spent a lot of time talking about, very forward-looking problems like AI, I want to almost do like a little bit of a throwback to a perennial favorite of go-to-market orgs, sales and marketing alignment. Some people call them frenemies, sometimes it's best friends. And, we know from all of the analysts out there that having the two teams aligned is an integral part of any success. And I know that with my sales leaders, the reason my phone's on silent is that we're talking to each other all the time. But what I would love to hear from all of you is, how have you seen teams work together this year from sales and marketing, especially given that there's so much more pressure on efficiency, budgets have been flat or down, and that it's not just the go-go days of, the 2010s. Would love to hear, what this group has seen work well, or, that's been more innovative this year.
Yeah, so we brought on a new CMO. We transitioned from a fractional CMO to a full-time CMO. So we're going through this right now, and I think it starts with defining sort of definitions. And we've actually gone back to actually look at how our reports are made and who owns them to ensure that we're sort of defining something the exact same way. So what we realize is that there are some sales reports that were created one way, or there are some marketing reports created another way. There are a couple different attribution models. So it's like, hey, let's just go back to the beginning. Let's look at, build out sort of the waterfall of data, put the reports in, and actually understand, like, hey, here's how we define SDR influence versus marketing influenced, or SDR source versus marketing source. We've documented it. We have it written in stone, and so now at least we can agree that the data that we're working off of together, we agree upon, which is basic, but has been helpful as we've found holes in how we were doing it previously.
And one step above that is having shared goals. So marketers that don't hold revenue as a goal often have difficulty with their sales counterparts. Anyone who's had marketing hit their goals and the company missed their revenue goals has not congratulated marketing. Mm-hmm. So I think starting with the performance metrics that the executives and team gets paid on is super important. Then having the goals right, and then Brian, for sure, having the data and reporting up to those goals right, are three really critical steps.
I think the important part of what you said, well, there's so many important parts, but what I heard really quickly was marketing doesn't get congratulated, but I think unfortunately a lot of us have taken seats previously held by individuals who may have self-congratulated, or at least that's the legacy in the company. And I didn't replace anyone, so I'm safe saying that. But I do think there's been a culture of MQLs. We made our MQL goal, so we sort of packed our bag and went home and had dinner on time with our families, like you guys weren't really able to do in sales. So my secret sauce, and it's not complicated and it's nothing that you all haven't done, but I do keep an ongoing list of key priorities. And once a week, everyone's invited. I walk through them. I say, we pivoted from last week. Here's why. Here's the data. There's nothing brilliant about this, but it has really surprised me how often people just say, it's so nice to know what your team is doing. It's so nice to know how you've prioritized these things. I didn't really understand why we didn't go to this conference. We've gone to this conference for 6 years and you came along and now we're not doing it. And what's so bad about what we did before? And we're able to dig in and say, maybe this wasn't properly attributed. I don't know. But from the data that I'm seeing, this wasn't a very successful conference when it comes to ROI. Let's chat about it. But that's the kind of open, I think, convincing folks from other departments. And again, we turn sales and marketing into sales, marketing, customer success, product. We really added to this problem by adding more people and calling it go-to-market. So it just requires a little bit of taking responsibility, I think, for the sins of the past, which isn't easy to do, but you sort of have to say, it's not just that we have to talk to each other. I really have to over-communicate with you and tell you why these projects align to revenue, and sort of hold myself accountable the whole way, that I don't want to go home and have dinner with my family on time when you're struggling, getting hung up on. I want to create a warmer world for you to do your job and be side by side with you, be held accountable like you. So I think it's gone a long way. I'll sum it up in just transparency. Why am I doing what I'm doing and spending what I'm spending and where?
That is so great. I want to jump in before anyone else says. I'm so sorry, Carrie Lou. But how do you pick the topics for that week? I mean, when you think about all the things marketing does, there are so many. So how do you how do you pick them? Because and so I can steal this, just so you all know why I'm asking.
And my question was just, what's the format? which is the
Okay,
same.
so we're all on the same
Is
page.
the format an email? Is it like
Well, now
where you
I'm
can
worried
check
I've
up the
oversold it.
goals?
I'll be honest with you all. No, I mean, I would love to take 10 minutes with any one of you and kind of show you, but it is a spreadsheet. It has a link to every working document that describes the project. My general rule of thumb is if it's taking more than 20 hours for anyone from marketing, I have it on that list. It's high, medium, low. And then there is so it's just a column, the project name, who's the lead, when it's going to be done, and how we'll know we're successful. And the last column is the company has strategic goals. So it's which strategic goal does this link to? What I did fight for to make some of that more convincing was an operational strategic goal, which we missed because yes, we absolutely need to be aligned to revenue and everybody's looking for that. But I also need to be honest with you that we're, as members of my team, my extended team, the team that I serve, is there are operational things we have to do and we spend time on those things, which not everybody knows unless you kind of tell them about them. So what are we doing to make, what are we doing to the website from a mechanical perspective? You don't have to care, but I want you to know that my team is spending time on it. It's taking time from things you might expect us to be doing. I'd be thrilled to share it more broadly.
In my company, I host a weekly 1 hour meeting called the Sparketing meeting, which is a sales, product, and marketing getting together, aligning on all the things that matter. Because I think in the modern GTM org, sales, product, and marketing are so intertwined. It's really hard to separate them, and so the teams have to be fully aligned on any messaging that's going out, programs that's happening, updates in the product, whatever it is. So we spend an hour each week going through various things. We always have few key items that we look at, like some dashboards, so we're aligned on data. But then there's deeper dive topics that we kind of dive into, and sometimes we'll bring in guest speakers, meaning like the VP of Revenue Marketing or the head of this new product that we're launching, and so on, to kind of dive deep into it, just to make sure that everyone's aligned. But it comes back to, I think, what you said, Kara Lewis. The only way I've seen alignment really work is if you have kind of shared KPIs and you overshare in some ways. Right? I mean, everything else I feel like I've always kind of failed with, but once you have those shared KPIs, usually around SQLs and opportunities and pipeline and so on, and everyone kind of shares in that, again, especially those three organizations, because I think they're so intertwined, then I think you start seeing really good cooperation happening.
I look forward to our weekly Smarketing meeting as well. I just like to say it. So great way to partner.
Well, first of all, Sparketing, my new favorite word. I knew about Smarketing, but I didn't know about Sparketing. So that just added some real life points for me. So we have a question for you, Brian, specifically, though, for everyone to chime in on one of my favorite and probably most contentious topics out there for this audience, attribution. Brian, does attribution by team matter? Why do companies, especially in multi-threaded buying teams, still use sourced attribution today?
So I think attribution does matter, and I think at a certain perspective, it informs you where to spend and invest. So at a team level, right, you do need to break down attribution so that you can help your marketer or potentially your SDR leader, figure out like, hey, where is the pipeline coming from? What's sourcing it? What does that process look like? And then as you plan for, more pipeline or future years, like where do you invest in that? Now, I do think that enterprises, as they start to adopt more of a buying group motion, we're seeing orgs, transitioning to sort of, hey, what activates the buying group? It's not about a single person's activation or attribution. It's about like, hey, how do I activate the whole group to drive an opportunity? So I think, attribution is really hard to do. It is extremely important still, but I think it's always going to be evolving as we look to better inform our go-to-market teams around where to invest and where to spend.
I think one of the most important things in attribution is not over-relying on the wrong metric. So when people say, oh, we just do last touch, or we just do first touch, they're all fingers that point to the moon. They're not the moon. So,
so
you know,
cool.
last touch attribution will over index on SDRs and it, you know, or this like, or SEO or SEM. For Atlassian, we would have cut everything except for SEM because once someone wanted to buy, they searched on the internet and found us and bought, and that was the all leads. But first touch, where people first find out about you in the world, is really important to keep refreshing the funnel. And then to Brian's point, you know, most top companies I know do quarterly analysis on what the won accounts look like and how that differs from lost accounts. And Sixth Sense has published a lot of data around this, but you know, the number of people in the buying committee has doubled or tripled in the last couple of years. The time to close, you know, has extended sometimes 6 to 12 months. And you know, if you're going to do first touch attribution with a 3-month look back window, you're going to get the wrong data. So I think you want to use first touch, last touch, multi-touch, end of quarter analysis, all as indicators to do the art and science of the balancing.
When I was at Forrester, when we would get questions around attribution, I would always note that it wasn't at all ever truly, Brian, the virtuous use of attribution that you just described, which is where should we invest time? Where should we invest our channels? And Carolou, how are people finding us? How do people learn about us? It was more like, gosh, my CEO won't get off our back about proving that we're impacting revenue. And that's it's a tough intent, right? To go about that to prove, because you can really make that stuff say a lot of things that you want it to say. Again, we know it over indexes on some pieces, under indexes on others. So, I think if there's a group of people who agree that this is the intent for what attribution is, we're going to learn about where to invest and reinvest. I don't really love seeing it as a tool for variable comp for CMOs and senior marketing folks, but I see that quite a bit.
Yeah, I think attribution to inform is better than attribution for credit, because when it becomes a thing for credit, it's really, it can go the wrong direction. And I think, there is an art and science to it. And so I think, done well, it can directionally help you make the right decisions. But, if we get into a fight over, was it SDR, was it marketing, was it the first touch, was it the last touch, that can become more of a distraction than an aid.
And I think that's why we've seen such a growth of marketing operations, revenue operations, sales operations. It's that function is becoming more and more important. And the sales ops people kind of need to understand more about marketing, and the marketing folks need to understand more about sales, because, we're all trying to fight for the same conversion rates down the funnel.
Yeah, I think one thing that I've done with certain sales leaders at different companies has been to say, finance sometimes will insist that there's that breakdown, but we will go to our go-to-market teams and say, it doesn't matter, it's the pipeline number, however we get there. And that's been, I think, a halfway compromise. Also, always love influence. So another question we have from the audience: has anyone used AI to find consumption patterns for personas, such as style of content or formulas, podcast articles, and the like?
It's a good idea. I haven't.
Sounds great. Let's build it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That could be a killer use case for marketing teams, for sure.
So again, we'll reassemble this time next year and ask again. Okay, so this year has been a lot of change, a lot of disruption through both a societal and business lenses. How have you kept your teams, or seen others keep their teams, on track and focused throughout all of the noise, all the time, everywhere?
It's been a lot the last couple of years. I don't know if it's just the last year. I mean, with COVID and even beforehand, right? I think it's about, the leadership has always been hard. I think it's a privilege and an honor to be a leader, but it's never easy. The job of a leader is, I think, is to show up relentlessly and fight for your team and be present and guide them and support them and nurture them. I don't think that has changed. I think the external environment goes through a lot of changes, but I think we've been through that before. I think anybody who uses that as as an excuse to not show up, I think is probably failing the art of what it means to be a leader, because it is such a privilege, I think, to be there. I think the way you show up as a leader, and what I see, the people who I admire, they're out there fighting and every day to give their teams the guidance and support and comfort they need, so they can do the best job of their life. Right? It's not that they have to be perfect in how they show up, but just like being visible, showing up, leaning into it. Maybe it's more than ever, but I don't know if it's changed that much, honestly.
Which I think brings us back to planning and Allison's weekly. I was digging into Allison's because I recently wrote about a plan on a page, which, yes, was Forrester, but they bought it from Marketing Profs. Who was the before? Anyway, Serious Decisions. It was Serious Decisions. Forrester bought it. Other people use it, but the marketing plan on the page. I'm just a planning wonk, because I think if we get the plan right, if we get the financial plan right now, then next year we can say, oh, look, one of the variables that we had is off. So this is what we actually expect. I mean, first you have to set up your team to succeed with the right plan. And then you have to have priorities that you can constantly come back to and trade off. And one best practice is trying to plan only for like 85% capacity, because you're going to acquire a company or have to respond to some market dynamic, or something big is going to come in. But it's the job of leaders to help protect their team from unlimited demands with limited resources. And the best boss I ever worked for, the shit rolled, but it didn't roll all the way downhill to us. Like, he's very clear about what success meant for you in your role at our organization within the boundaries of what we could control. And that was so satisfying. I could flourish in the midst of a lot of like chaos and gunk. So outside of that, I also feel like it's like getting in shape. If you get into a routine and you have a strong routine and you just run the routine, like the right cadence of team meetings. Now we're all going to have Spark meetings, pipeline meetings, and all hands meetings, just really being visible and continuing to reinforce your belief in the future and your prioritization of what you can control.
Just to jump on that, have a plan. Carrie Lou, I remember a couple of months ago, you gave me a phenomenal piece of advice, which I'd love to share, which is, you always the 85% capacity, because things are going to come up, doing the same thing with your budget, but don't label that as plan for ahead or rainy day.
Slush fund. Never call it the slush fund.
Yeah. You told me call it competitive bucket. And just things like that, they'll be like, oh no, you definitely need that bucket. And yeah, that was brilliant advice.
Smart.
Someone once told me to label that brand dominance, and people, and it's fake. I mean, it's the slush fund, but people say, oh, brand dominance.
Oh,
You really know
that's some good marketing right there.
I wish I could credit someone with that. I don't remember. It wasn't me though.
I'd be supportive. I love that brand dominance.
Yeah.
The job of a leader is to predict the unpredictable. And we've all been in this business enough to know there's going to be at least 15 to 25% of what happens next year that's unpredictable. And so how do we set goals that plan for that? How do we set budget and headcount to hold some stuff back to address that? Because the worst thing for teams is flip-flopping, right? I mean, part of the problem of all of these layoffs was that we hired so quickly in unprofitable structures, which we had to do to try to get to market fast. But flip-flopping is really hard for the employees. So the more we can plan for the unexpected, because we don't know what it'll be, but we know it'll happen, the more effective we can be as grounded leaders.
Okay. So as we're wrapping up, New Year's resolutions are coming. What are you leaving behind in 2024? And what do you want to make sure you bring with you for 2025?
Thomas, what are you seeing in your portfolio?
So in our portfolio, I think there's a lot of chaos, right? The world has never moved as fast as it has in the last couple of years. So we tell our portfolio companies to basically stick to the plan. Of course, plan for the unplanned, but they have to remain quite agile. So that's kind of the global message. And what we tell them as well is that the market is going to be flooded by a lot of AI content. A lot of new tools are going to pop up. It's going to be harder to differentiate. So we tell our companies, just focus on the product. Just keep focusing on building a good product. And we think that next year the main focus of the industry is going to be on trying to hyper personalize and really focus on your kind of like core persona, because I think there's going to be so much content that's going to be harder and harder to differentiate. I think we're going to get completely flooded.
And the human voice is going to stand out. I read a blog, we mentioned it a couple times, but I've tried a lot to use AI for the blog, and I get frustrated because it sounds so generic. So I've tried to add in even more personal stories just to be like, I'm a real person back here behind what sounds like generic advice. But I do think the human aspect is going to continue to come forward, and hopefully in the SDRs, like with Brian's effectiveness and efficiency, hopefully that leaves more time for really engaging conversations with the right people.
I think we see that all the time in the may disagree, but a lot of founders that we admire right now have their own voices or just voices in the market. Carol, as you know, I mean, I know you from your newsletter, having never met you. But folks are out there kind of being pretty human and vulnerable on LinkedIn and other platforms, blogs, and it is to see those personal stories. I think it really does bring things to life in a way that I think you're right is necessary and cuts through a lot of the noise and works.
I would lean into storytelling. I think we're in the golden age of storytelling. There's so many wonderful ways to tell the story of who you are, what you do. To your point, Allison, what you do, Carol, was fantastic. So many ways. The downside of this golden age of storytelling is that there's so much noise out there. So unless you have an interesting point of view or something interesting to say, you're never going to break through. So it requires, I think, a lot of courage from go-to-market teams, a lot of conviction, having a point of view, standing for something. I think those are going to still stand out. But if you're kind of bland and wishy-washy, you're never going to break through. People are just so overwhelmed with information. So I'm optimistic that this age will continue, but it requires GTM teams to have a lot of courage in what they say and do.
Yeah,
I also have two. Oh yeah, go ahead, Brian.
No, I was just gonna say we're gonna double down on a lot of that. Like, how do you enhance the human side of things? Even in SDR development, we got into a bad cycle where it's like, hey, send some gift cards, get some meetings, get promoted. Well, now you don't even know how to have a conversation, and you're an AE at this point. So for us, it's continuing to develop down on those human skills, which is like how to talk to people, how to communicate, how to connect, right? How to tell an engaging story, explain what our customers do through a story, not through features and functionality. So for us, that's a big initiative for next year, and investing in our humans.
Great. Well, we have 2 minutes left. Julia, I could throw one more question out, or should we, is it time to wrap up? What do you think?
Thank you so much, Ellie. Such an amazing panel. We have a very, very live chat in Slack for all of you watching. If you haven't joined yet, please do. And since we have the one and only Mark Organ here, a good transition. And the last question, I guess, to all of you is, what do you think about the latest announcement from Salesforce and the hiring 1,000 salespeople to push the agent force? Mark?
Yeah. Sorry, you can hear me here?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Well, yeah, I think it's a sign of the times. I think that's one area where Mark Benioff has been really great, has been in understanding the adoption of new categories and technologies. I think hiring that many people, it's pretty clear where he thinks the future is. And yeah, I'm very excited about the idea of agents in sales and marketing. And clearly, I think the public markets too have reacted, I think, quite positively to where Salesforce is going. And I think with the data they have, I believe they've got a shot to build something really great.
Any thoughts, Carolo?
I mean, I've been to Dreamforce 15 years, 17 years, I don't even know, all of them. And Mark is great at calling the next wave and calling ownership over it. So it was Agentforce this year. They changed their pricing to be agent-based and give away the rest of the software for free. They're going really deep into their differentiator of having what we talked about earlier today, access to all of your data to be smarter and private around the processes and people and everything that they hold. So I think Salesforce has a great opportunity and is absolutely a visionary leader. Can they deliver? That is always the question. They announced Einstein, and then it was many years till Einstein lived up to the vision. Most of the companies that I work with are constantly frustrated by their Salesforce implementations. If anyone out there from Salesforce is listening, we want better marketing dashboards with targets and gap to target and pacing. So I agree with Mark. I think it's exciting to see the investment, and they often lead the field.
I mean, I used to work at Salesforce for many years, and this is classic Salesforce. I mean, Salesforce does best when they're the underdog, and they're not really the underdog in many categories anymore. But in this one, they are. And now they're pitting themselves with an underdog against the big bad Microsoft. It's a smart move because everybody loves rooting for an underdog, and they love to see that clash of titans. So that's going to happen next. It's classic smart move.